Hey guys, welcome to the Quarantino Special today on RC Cinema. I'm Chris, that's Ryan, and we're here with a big episode, maybe our biggest yet, as we unfold, take a deep dive into Tarantino. Now, we got some big ones up for you right here. Ryan, why don't you go ahead and tell the guys what we have?
We have Kill Bills Volume 1 and 2 that we will be reviewing today, and maybe a bonus episode after this. We will reveal at the end of the episode what the next one will be, the next installment in the Quarantino weekend, if you will.
Yes, it's going to be an exciting weekend, and who knows what could happen. Anything can happen in this Quarantino weekend, and we're happy to be here with you guys. We're happy you're here with us too, and let's get started right into it. Kill Bill. I mean, we've both seen this movie probably a bunch of times. This is a movie we both have probably grown up on, whether we like Tarantino or not, whether we love these films or not. It's definitely been a center point of film for us at some point in our lives. So tell me your first thoughts on Kill Bill, Ryan.
So
Volume one.
So I mean, I feel like it's really difficult to mention one without mentioning two. Although, I think personally, one is far superior to two. In a lot of ways, there's just the scenes are better. I feel like a lot of the characters, are better. I don't know how to put in the word, I didn't fully enjoy this film until later in life, because I'll be honest, as a teenager and whatnot, I didn't fully appreciate horror movies until maybe later on in high school. And I feel like, the bloodbath that is Kill Bill, both volumes, you kind of have to have an appreciation for gore and over the top action that these films bring to the table. And you have to have an appreciation for so many other things. And if not, this will give you appreciation for other things. And, it helped me to seek out things that I didn't already watch. This is kind of what brought me to Bruce Lee movies. This is kind of what introduced me into, liking some anime. I'm not the biggest anime fan, but I can appreciate where it is. And this has it draws a lot of similarities to anime. I can honestly see this movie getting remade as a fully animated feature, even though and we even get some animated features in the film, so
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you. I mean, I have my own personal dislikes and likes about Tarantino. I have reasons why I don't like him. I have reasons why I do like him, and that goes for all of his films as well. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, when I first saw Kill Bill, I was probably 13, 14 years old. I was young and I loved it. I mean, because 13, 14-year-old me, I loved the violence. I loved the stylization of stuff that I didn't know, like samurai cinema, martial arts cinema, spaghetti westerns. All these things were all dude, what is this? This is crazy. I'd seen The Good, the Bad, the Ugly probably, but I never, I had never really seen Enter the Dragon or some Bruce Lee stuff or Tokyo Drift or Kurosawa, things like Seven Samurai and Rashomon and films like that. But, this was kind of also an introduction to stuff that I would, maybe appreciate later on more than I appreciate Kill Bill. For me to see, him stylizing those genres then led me to when I, went into film school, or when I started exploring Japanese samurai cinema or Kurosawa or these kind of guys. This was whoa, he used these. I was introduced to this, and now I'm seeing what this was, whether it's westerns or samurai and stuff like that. He uses all these styles, and he really does a cool job with it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, a lot of the criticism for Tarantino is that this was done before. Oh, this was done before. Oh, like he's just ripping off this person. He's just ripping off that person. But I feel like, you shouldn't look at it as like him ripping something off, more as like him introducing a younger generation to things that he liked, and hoping that, if you do love his films and if you love film enough, you'll seek out other things that he also enjoyed, and maybe will give you great appreciation for those things too. Because he riffs off of like Sergio Leone all the time, but that doesn't take away from, like, just because somebody's paying homage to something that he likes, it doesn't diminish the achievement of that person. You know what I mean? If anything, it's going to show these like people who care to look like, oh, like that's something that Sergio Leone did in his westerns. Maybe I should go watch those movies. Maybe I should go watch like the Dollars franchise, or like Once Upon a Time in the West, which is like one of my absolute favorite movies of all time. I remember like watching those movies with like my grandfather,
Mm-hmm.
like, and so, like it's something that I feel like people give him a lot of slack for, but I feel as though Quentin Tarantino is any film buffs, or film like critiquer or whatever. He's their introduction into these other things that they will gain a greater appreciation for later on in life. He's like film 101. You know what I mean? Like if he's like your beginner class, that I don't think that's a bad thing. You know what I mean? I really don't think that's a bad thing, because he's gonna open doors to all these other things for you, that if you care to look for them, then you'll open yourself up to all these other things.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you, and I mean, like, and looking back, I mean, it's been a while since I've taken an in-depth look into like Tarantino's movies, like Kill Bill and this stuff. I've kind of ventured off into these other things that Tarantino takes from, and you know, I used to think, be like, dude, he just rips off everybody, but I don't even like to say it's ripping off. And very wise and very intelligent film critic once told me, she said, if you're gonna rip off someone, rip off the best. And everybody does it, and it's okay. It's not, to me, it's not ripping it off. To me, it's not ripping it off. To me, it's appreciating what you've seen and trying to see what you can do with it, and that's fine. There's no problem with that. And a point you made is very valid too, because it is like an introduction, and a lot of people our age, a lot of people in our generation, 35 and under, they love Tarantino. That's like the guy they know. I mean, sure, they'll know Scorsese, they'll know, some other directors, Christopher Nolan or something like that, but they really know Tarantino. And, it's really interesting because you have all these juxtapositions of different styles kind of melange, kind of mixed together into one. And it's really cool to see. And before we get more into this, I actually, for people who haven't seen Kill Bill Volume 1 or Volume 2, let's give you a quick little premise of it. Basically, Uma Thurman plays this, she's called the Bride. She's this woman who was a part of a team of assassins led by this guy named Bill. She left the assassins and kind of ran away and tried to start a new life. And, how we're introduced to her is literally her bloodied on the ground, kind of being killed by the people that she was with, this group of assassins. They're called the Deadly Viper Squad?
Deadly Viper Assassin Squad.
There you go, yeah.
And they're all named after different type of deadly snakes.
Mm-hmm,
so,
mm-hmm.
You got Cottonmouth, which is Oren Ishii. That's Lucy Liu's character, who I believe to be one of the most badass characters, not only in like the Tarantino universe, but like any movie universe. You know what I mean? Like, give me Oren Ishii against like so many people. Like, I'll take Oren. Like, she's so badass. And there's also like the bride, who is referred to as Beatrix Kiddo at some points, but like she doesn't really have like a name per se in the film. She's Black Mamba, which we'll get into later. You know, Black, and I'll do a little Kobe thing in a little bit. Don't worry. Um, you have Copperhead, who is Vivica A. Fox, and I'm slipping on two of them. That's Michael Madsen's character, and I forget the other actress.
Well, Michael Madsen, that's Buck. Is it Bud? I think it's
no,
Bud.
no. Buck is
the guy.
The Buck is the guy from
the
nurse.
My name is Buck, and I'm here to fuck.
And if it's your first time watching the movie, you won't get spoiled because it's pretty right in front of you right away. But Daryl Hannah's character is Elle Driver. And she's the California mountain snake, and I think that's because she's more of this like California, what you would stereotype as this like Californian woman, you know. She's like a little fancier.
She's got like fakeness going on.
Yeah, exactly,
you know,
exactly. And she's a little crazy too. So it's a very interesting introduction. I mean, we're going to take a look at it in a second, but we basically are introduced to our main character on the brink of death.
Literally at her lowest moment.
Yeah, let's show that right here, right now.
Oh, kiddo, this moment, this is me at my most masochistic.
Bill, it's your baby.
Yeah, so that's like really cool, and the cool part about that is both Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2 have that introduction, and that's an interesting thing that I actually didn't pick up the first time, you know, the original time that I'd watched this movie. And looking back on it now, it's really cool that's how they do that for both films. It's a weird introduction. You're going back and forth between black and white and color, and you know, you're not sure what's going on. You just see a lot of killing and gore, which is very Tarantino-esque. Yeah. And we'll talk about that later. But what do you think about that introduction, Ryan?
I think it's great actually to introduce her character at her lowest moment. So everything from that point on is to build her up and to show like resilience, because this is honestly, it's a revenge tale at the end of the day, you know. And it's a revenge tale at the end of the day. I think everything should be done at some point to try to build up her character, like from the beginning of 1 till the end of 2, you know. Especially the fact that like you're shown at the end that like her daughter, at the end of 2, that her daughter really isn't, you know, dead, and that Bill took all this time to raise the daughter and whatnot. You know, I think everything is done to build up this character. I think it's a great beginning to the film, because you know, you need a reason to see why she is so like, why she needs to kill all these people in such violent ways.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because like first you see her like in this violent situation, and then you're kind of just thrown, I mean, between her getting, you know, slaughtered at this chapel to then her in this rapey hospital where, you know, and
she meets Buck.
Not to sound crude, but listen, this is a movie by Tarantino, and if you're, you know, lighthearted and you're, you know, it's hard to watch these kind of things, I'm sorry, but this is the movie we're doing, and you know,
maybe this episode isn't for you at that point.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Maybe this movie isn't for you. You know,
give it a chance.
Yeah.
Give it a chance. There's always more to it. But we're then put in this hospital. She's in a coma, and that's where Buck, who likes to fuck, comes in. I mean, he's this nurse who's like having guys pay him to have sex with these comatose corpses, and it's really disgusting and, you know, vile. And when she wakes up in this environment. So she goes into this coma in this gross, fucked up, violent environment, and she wakes up right back into it. And the only way out of it, as it is the only way to her, you know, in a grand scheme of things, escape this violence, escape this terribleness that she's in, is to kill all these people that are in it, and it starts with Buck who likes to fuck, and it ends with Bill. And throughout that, it's every bad person dies, and no one. I don't think anyone. I think Uma Thurman has has her reason, but I think that there is a lot of ruthlessness and a lot of you know a lot of senseless violence that happens.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting that, the California mountain snake, or Elle Driver, at the beginning of the film, it's like, it's right there in that whole sequence that she gets angry at Bill because she's like right there and she can totally kill Uma Thurman's character right there. And Bill's like, nah, don't do it. He like lets her live, and he gives her this like reward of like, okay, like I'm allowing you to live. And I think at that point, that's probably when he realized, I had like, this is the mother to my daughter. I don't want to kill the mother of my daughter. And she gets so like, Elle Driver, she gets so angry at this, because she knows, she's like, damn it, like I'm going to have to deal with this later. And I know for a fact I'm going to have to deal with this later because this is like literally the most driven person, It's like almost like they all know, because it's really funny to me that like as soon as Vivica A. Fox's character sees her, she's like, damn it. Like now I have to deal with this person who is literally the deadliest person I've ever known in my entire life. Like, and now I have to fight this fucking lady. Like right now, this is not like, okay, I'm probably like, I definitely had the risk of dying. Like you can see the sheer, like she's terrified,
Yeah. And I think, going back to Bill for a second before I get into Vivica A. Fox, I think that, Bill sends Elle Driver out to kill Uma. And while he's waiting to hear from Elle Driver and this is not shown on screen, this is obviously off screen. So this is the character, when you think of a character a little more extended outside of just what you're seeing, which is important in film in general. But, I think he's pondering and he's like, and he says this on the phone to Elle Driver. He says, we've done all this fucked up shit. We've, slaughtered her. We put her in a coma for 4 years. We, made her think that her daughter's dead. If she wakes up from this coma, then we deserve to die. And he says to Elle Driver, we'll be ready for her. But I think he knows. I think he knows that if she wakes up, they're all going to die. And he's okay with that. If she is that motivated to have this child, to have this life, then she deserves it. And I think Bill knows this. And I think Bill loves her enough to do that. He's sick. He's fucked up. He knows he's sick. He knows he's fucked up. He said, it's literally the opening words. He's like, this is my most I don't know how to pronounce it.
Machiavelli.
No, it's
masochist.
Masochist. He says this. He knows he's fucked up, but he knows that like in this fucked up world that he's created for not only himself, not only but for all of the girls, including Uma Thurman. He knows that like if she fucking bounces back from this, if she comes out of this coma of 4 years after being literally shot in the head, then Bill, deserve to die. She deserves her revenge. And you say this is a revenge story, and I think Bill, that's kind of like the interesting characterness, like the character of Bill. Bill is fair. He's cruel, he's fucked up, he's a asshole, but he's a fair guy and he's a smart guy.
You know what she has? She has? She's got the Mamba mentality, man. That's the thing. Mentality. And that's this film is where like basically the phrase Mamba mentality comes from. This is where it comes from.
Isn't this where Kobe Bryant drew this inspiration for him?
So he wasn't referred to as like the Black Mamba until the first film had come out, and I think it wasn't until like 2006 that people started calling him that. I mean, I'm sure somebody can back check me and be like, oh no, it was 2005 or something like that. You know, I don't have my exact dates on this, but it
If it
definitely
is,
was
drop it in
not
the comments. Drop it in the
yeah,
comments.
yeah. If you want to correct me, go ahead. I'm totally like, I totally love to know like if I'm wrong about that, but I know for a fact that he definitely was not referred to as the Black Mamba before this, because this was such like a big moment in pop culture, and this was like 2004 when this came out, or 2003 when this came out, and 2004 when Volume 2 came out, you know. And she's just so like the idea of like Mamba mentality is like you're so driven by your goal that you'll do anything in order to achieve that goal, you know. And that's like the Kobe, that's like coined as like the Kobe Bryant mentality, but like it's drawn from the mentality of the Black Mamba in this movie. And what's really cool, and something I didn't notice until I'd rewatched this movie like maybe 4 times, and it just like it will like like if you don't know like Nike, and if you don't know like Kobe Bryant's brand, and you won't make this connection, but like the logo, like the Kobe Bryant logo, which is like a 3-pointed like,
let's put it up on the screen right now. So here it is.
It's like a it's like a 3-pointed, like almost like a cross, kind of like looks like a Y. And that like here we'll show you is right on all this, is on like the Black Mamba sword. It's on Bill's sword. You know, he literally takes his logo from this movie. So I think like, I'm not trying to like, I'm not trying to say like, oh, like Kobe Bryant stole this. I think it's like one of the coolest things that like he took from this movie, or even somebody had the idea to take from this movie, you know. Oh, let's compare these two people. It's such a like a little cool little thing that comes up later on, you know what I mean? And you know, I think about this, and this is even in my Letterboxd review of it. I said I really hope that I really hope that Quentin Tarantino like got paid something by Nike to make these to like make these shoes, and like allow him to use that logo, because I don't even think Kobe uses that logo, or his brand use that logo like anymore, because they probably had to pay some type of royalty to Quentin Tarantino for using that logo, because he probably owns a copyright to it.
And again, if anyone knows this information, drop it in the comments. We'd love to hear it. And let's move on a little bit. I mean, now that we've gotten into a little bit of the characters and the motives behind all this revenge, all this violence. I mean, look, I want to take a second and talk about Tarantino and violence. You know, he loves to use violence, and I have very mixed feelings about it. On one hand, I get it. I get why he does it. I get the appeal to it. I get in some areas of the movies, it's necessary. In some areas, it's, it's showy. And in some areas, I find it to be a little too much and not needed. And, you know, I was talking today with a few people about it too, as I was preparing for this podcast. And I kind of came to some idea of something. And after watching some like Tarantino, you know, I did a deep dive last night, like 3 a.m, watched like 7 Tarantino interviews and tried to get a feel for him a little bit. And, you know, for some of these things, I think it's kind of a fear for him. I think he's a little bit of afraid. And it's a shame, because I think Tarantino, some of his best qualities are the way he tells a story, the way he writes a story, and the way he can put those words into images. I think he can do that so beautifully. And I think that he has those moments where he's like, look at this beautiful piece I did. But then he's afraid that it won't get the recognition if there's no violence, because we live in a culture that is driven by violence. That as he was coming up as a director, you know, out was going Sunset Boulevards, the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, the Taxi Drivers, which are story-driven things, and in were coming these violent actions, the Bournes, the MCU, the Die Hards, all this stuff, and he felt that like, damn, is there no place for this story anymore? Is it just that I have to have this violence that to make this story flow, to have these things in there, but also have to have this violence? And I think it's very interesting.
And I think, so you bring that up, but it's important to note that with his most recent film, there was almost no violence until the very end of the movie,
Mhm.
and it arguably it's like the least bloody scene that he's like ever done.
Yeah,
In
and
that sense, you know what I mean? I'm not going to say that it's not like violent in any way. I mean, he literally Leonardo DiCaprio lights a girl on fire in that film, but and Brad Pitt smashes a girl like space in, like, which is like ridiculous, but I feel like,
on the level of
yeah,
Tarantino's
but on the
violence.
level, but like when we're talking about like Quentin Tarantino, we're that's pretty tame, to
Yeah,
be
I mean,
completely honest. It's pretty tame.
for the guy who's literally had a dude's head splattered all over a car, it's calmed down. And I do agree with your point. And I think maybe that's because he knows, he's like, fuck it. He's like, dude, what do I care? I'm so successful already. People will watch my movies. Now I can be myself. Now I can, not have to rely so much on the violence. People will watch it. And as Tarantino has stated many a times that he's doing 10 movies and then he's out. And as viewers, as film people, we're excluding, of course, that partnership directed film that he did, Death Proof.
Yeah, Death Proof,
So
and what's the other one? I forget.
I
It
don't
was a
know,
double feature with Robert Rodriguez.
but
I mean,
we're
it's
excluding
arguably
those.
a little it's forgettable in the pantheon of
Mm-hmm.
Tarantino films. You know what I mean? It's definitely it has its own place, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not I don't really count it
No.
in his films. And you know what? I think that I feel like, just to touch on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I feel like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is kind of saying, there was a point in American culture when these like big blockbuster films weren't being seen as much, and then in came like the American New Wave films, the Taxi Drivers, like, it's hard not to mention when we're talking about these things, like with his next film most likely being his last film, which will be, like heartbreaking for like people like me who he really introduced, me to like all these other things that I love. So, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, it's not necessarily that he's my favorite, but it's kind of a thing where a lot of people probably owe him for like getting into film and looking toward all these other things, and with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, he's kind of signifying like, oh, this is kind of the end for me. The way things are going in modern times is that everything's becoming very niche. Whatever you like, you can find that. You know what I mean? Monoculture is dead. There's very, very few exceptions to this rule nowadays. Like, you could say the Avengers movies are still monoculture. Game of Thrones was definitely a monoculture. There's very few people who didn't watch Game of Thrones. And even if, like, there's always that one person who's like, oh, well, I didn't watch Game of Thrones. It's like, well, cool for you. You didn't watch the thing that literally everybody watched. Like, you're so cool. Whatever. I don't care. But, I feel like in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it's showing this time in American culture when, every like actors were moving more toward television, and these like tentpole films weren't making as much money. Like, things were bombing at the box office. These like films that you could even think were like classic films, like, weren't really doing that well. Like Dr. Dolittle was like a bomb at the box office, and it was during this time. And eventually film had a resurgence with like American New Wave. When you have like Apocalypse Now, you have Taxi Driver, you have The Godfather, you there was like this resurgence, and it moved into this like new wave kind of stuff. But like, the thing is, man, is that like we're kind of going toward that now, and it's really sad to see, like it bums me out, because I really I loved going to the movies as a kid. And obviously so did Quentin Tarantino, and he gave me this like appreciation for doing that. And especially in this film, I personally don't remember ever going to see this film in the theater, definitely because I was definitely not old enough to go see it, even though there was a theater down the street from my mother's work that like literally would let me into like any movie. Like it didn't matter. It was just really funny to me anyway. But like, I just think that, he sees the end, and he knows that his violent films don't have a place in like the American like consciousness as much anymore as like pop culture like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean, I want to. There's a lot there, and I want to kind of unpack it a little bit because I
Yeah.
think you're bringing up some really, really valid points. Yeah, I mean, I think we're, like you said, the story he's trying to tell in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is that there were these big, you're coming out of the 50s and the 40s and the 60s, even the beginning of the 60s, where you had these big box office hits, whether it was the film noir or, early 60s movies. But then stuff started, in the 50s and 60s going to television, and, actors were going to shows and stuff. And, Tarantino has said this himself, that he said that he only wants to do, he's kind of getting ready to leave film and move to other ventures in life because he finds himself to be a part of this old guard of cinema. That's what he said, and he feels that there's not a place for it. And that's a sad, reality. But like it was in that time of Once Upon a Time of Hollywood that he's talking about, yeah, they went away for a little bit, but then they came back. So don't give up hope on these kind of movies, because you never know, man. And a lot of kids our age, a lot of kids, the 35s and unders, they do have an appreciation for film. And I can see there being a surge coming back. Now, you've been bringing up this point that I've been wanting to talk about a lot. And that's this point of Tarantino wanting to be this voyeur for people, this person that shows people cinema. And I relate to that a lot, I've watched movies from the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, and I've always loved to be able to share it. And, I think that stems also for Tarantino. He used to work at a video store. Mm-hmm. And I actually saw in this interview, he was saying like, I kind of got locally famous because I gave all these recommendations, and they weren't just recommendations because these were the top box office movies. They were recommendations based on what the person likes, what he felt the person was, into. And I think that
he was everybody's Netflix queue in Hollywood.
Exactly. And I think that kind of transitioned as he became a filmmaker. And Tarantino says this. He says, the only other real job I've ever held outside of being a film director is working in a video store. And I think that those video store days, that could be his rosebud, to quote Citizen Kane. His memory of something so wonderful for him is giving these people these recommendations, then hearing them call him out on the streets and be like, hey, Quentin, I love that movie you gave me, and stuff like that. And he's transitioned it into the films. He's taken the styles from Kurosawa's Seven Samurai, which we'll get into later, or Tokyo Drifter, or these Japanese martial art films, or these, spaghetti westerns, these things that he grew up watching. And he's been like, let me show you. Let me modernize it, and let me show you these things, and you'll appreciate them. And I think that's a very... I think for someone who tells these violent, dark, rough stories, I think he's actually quite a sentimental and emotional guy, and it's an interesting peek into this guy's mind, into Tarantino's mind.
Yeah, he wants to show you what you're missing. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot. I really feel like, and we've done like 20 minutes at this point just on Tarantino himself. But like,
this is the Quarantino Special.
Yeah, this is the Quarantino Special. So we need to delve into him a bit too. Mm-hmm. I just kind of feel like, there a lot of the hate comes from a lot of the dislike comes from these people who are like these very educated film people. You know what I mean? And I just feel as though they don't have like the appreciation of like what he means to like cinema as a whole, rather than like they focus on this one thing. It's like, you don't like because you're at a party and that one douchey dude who's like probably only ever seen Pulp Fiction or even Kill Bill, if they've seen Kill Bill, then like, cool, great. I think that's great. But like, if you've only ever seen like 2 Tarantino movies, you're probably, you know, you're that dude who like, oh, like he makes like liking he makes liking both of those movies like part of his personality or something like that, you know. And that's kind of where I feel like this like dislike comes from, because you're like, oh, now I gotta talk to this like douchey dude about like, oh yeah, Pulp Fiction's so great, and then like, you know, but you're thinking in the back of your head, man, I hate the parts with Bruce Willis. Like that's what I think. You know what I mean? Like, and they'll just talk to you about like this movie that you've seen like like tons and tons of times, and like, you know, so much more about it than they do, and they don't, you know, they don't have like the appreciation for other things. But you know what, I feel like what you need to do in those moments is be like, oh yeah, well, you know, if you like that, you should check this out. And then they'll be like, oh yeah, like, yeah, I've definitely seen like The Hateful Eight. Oh well, if you like The Hateful Eight, man, then you should check out like Once Upon a Time in the West. You should check out The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. You know, you should check out like The Searchers. You know, you should go check out these other Western films. Yeah, these classic Western films, because I feel like you'll have an appreciation for them. And, you know, maybe try to educate people when they like something, rather than, you know, take away from what they like, you know.
Yeah, dude,
because he is pop culture,
100%.
like he is pop culture, but everything that he's done has been pop culture at some point. You know what I mean? In one region or another.
Definitely. And also, like, you know, I have, listen, and Ryan knows this, there's plenty of things I can talk about that are problems for me with Tarantino. You know, I've had phases where I've, you know, stayed away from him because, look, when I first got introduced to Tarantino, dude, and this is like, as the video store memories are sentimental for Tarantino, these memories of me being like 14, 15 years old, laying in my bed late at night, sneaking, like watching TV late at night when I have school the next day, you know, and watching like Kill Bill or watching Pulp Fiction or Reservoir Dogs or Jackie Brown. Those are sentimental to me because those were like they weren't the first big exposures, but they made me delve deeper, as we've been saying, into like spaghetti westerns, into film noir, into classic Japanese cinema. And it's like, damn, like maybe Tarantino did do something more for me than I'm actually giving him credit for. And he did. And to go on further about that as well is like, yeah, like Tarantino films are great, but they're really great if you then take those things and you go see The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, or Shane, or The Searchers, or if you go and you go watch, you know, Akira Kurosawa, who's such a fantastic and beautiful director, who's done Seven Samurai. Who and Rashomon, which are these great classic films that if you want to know film and call yourself literate in film, you have to see these. And for myself, now as I've become transitioned out of youth into adult, and I've studied film and I've, you know, researched it and stuff, you know, I'm so appreciative for the things that he has opened me up to, because now I've seen these great Japanese film or film noir, you know. Hiroshima Mon Amour by Alain Resnais is another beautiful Japanese film. And it just makes you, if you take the opportunity that you have to use what Tarantino gives you and explore with it these other films, it can be great. And not just be one of those girls that buys that written and directed by Quentin Tarantino. Don't be that. Dude, there's so much more you can find from this stuff. And if you really just did the research, you can explore a whole new world that isn't too far off. And if you give it the time, it's really, really good.
Yeah, dude, where's my written and directed by Sergio Leone shirt? You know, where's that at, man?
By Kurosawa shirt.
Yeah, exactly. Give me that shirt, man. I'll take that shirt. You know, I don't want the hip Quentin Tarantino shirt. Exactly, give me the other stuff. You know what I mean? I passed film 101. I want film 500. You know what I mean? Like, and the thing is, man, is like you talk about that, and like even in this film, in Kill Bill, he makes callbacks to things that like personally I didn't know about until I watched this. So like the Game of Death suit that she wears when she goes into the Yakuza, like it's straight from a Bruce Lee movie. It's from Game of Death. You know what I mean? I wouldn't have checked out like Bruce Lee movies like Enter the Dragon, which is one of like the few posters I have on my wall. One of them is Enter the Dragon, and I love that movie because it's like this spy thriller jet like kung fu movie, and it's like so cool to me anyway, you know. And like these Bruce, like he has like this like deep appreciation for Bruce Lee movies too, and you know a lot of people have problems with the way he portrayed Bruce Lee in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And you know, I think that people shouldn't look at it that way. You know, I don't want to do this whole deep dive into Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but like I think that you should, like, people who have a problem with that should think about it this way, that Cliff Booth is like, you know, he's like an old Hollywood guy, you know what I mean? And you know how like people exaggerate their stories later on in life? He's like, oh yeah, remember that time I kicked Bruce Lee's ass? It's like, dude, like you didn't kick Bruce Lee's ass, he kicked your ass. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, yeah, man, I tossed him into the car and everything like that, and that's why I got kicked off set. And like, no, dude, you got your ass kicked by Bruce Lee, and like you dented the car because you knocked him into it, and then he kicked your ass. Like that's why they kicked you off set. You know what I mean? Like that's the way you should be thinking about it. You shouldn't be thinking about it in like oh, he like shit on Bruce Lee or something like that. Like people take his things too literally sometimes, and I feel like especially with that film. But you know, that's for another podcast. Yeah, good. I mean, it is the Quarantino Special, but you know, that's to unpack in like a different setting. But I feel as though that's like an exaggeration by Cliff, personally.
Yeah.
You know,
and I think this is a perfect time to transition into, you know, some of the stuff that's in Kill Bill that is, you know, while we're on the subject, from older things. The first thing I want to talk about is, and I think you do too, is the big Yakuza scene. And we'll get into it. First, I want to show, you know, let's show a clip of it, and then let's go and show a clip from another film called Tokyo Drifter. So here is the Yakuza scene, the famous Yakuza scene from Kill Bill, Volume 1. So yeah, isn't that such a crazy, I mean, there's so much to unpack there, and we'll get to that. But you know, you have this like the imagery with the lights and everything, and these dark shadows fighting. But here's where this is drawn from, and this is a scene from Tokyo Drifter. That's you know, one of the classic Japanese cinema. Great film, 1966, directed by Seijun Suzuki. And we're going to take a look at this clip right here.
今日のところは別れだ。犬の権利書は一時預かってもらうぜ。
Yeah, I mean, another great scene, great director, great cinematography, and you can really see where Tarantino draws from this. I mean, not just in the set design and how he has the characters move and the actions even within it, and obviously the similar story of like Yakuza Club fighting and stuff like that, but it's just another interesting look into, you know, what we were talking about, Tarantino taking this stuff from these classic films. So, Ryan, what do you think about this great big Kill Bill, samurai, Yakuza? I mean, these are the things that we dream about, that we lust about. What do you think about this scene right here?
I honestly think that this is like, I think it's like his, personally, I feel like it's like magnum opus of scenes. You know what I mean? If you're going to look at like the dichotomy of like all his scenes, you know what I mean? I feel like this is the one personally that sticks out the most. This and the Pulp Fiction scene, the, you know, that is a tasty burger scene. And that's like, so, you know, there are his scenes that are dialogue driven. You know what I mean? Like the bar scene in Inglorious Bastards, which is like 40 freaking minutes long almost, like, and then there are these scenes, you know what I mean? I feel like this is the type of scene that is like any film school kid's dream to like be a part of, you know what I mean? He
Oh,
gets
yeah.
he gets all the things that he wants to get done in this one scene, you know what I mean? And even an interesting note is that, you know, the last dude that she's like about to kill, the dude is like scared shitless because she just like mowed down all these dudes. And then one of the funniest parts of the entire film is that like like this dude is like scared shitless. And you know, you said this earlier that it kind of this part like draws on, like, it shows that she's a mother and it shows that she cares because he's so scared, and she just decides not to kill him and it just spanks him with this sword, and she's like, go home to your mother, this is what you get for fucking with a yakuza. And like it's just so funny to me. It's so funny that he knows how to, like, okay, we just had this huge intense moment, like one of the it's like this iconic moment in cinema history, if you ask me. And like he just breaks up all this tension with like this funny ass joke with like this woman who just slaughtered all these people, like being like, you're gonna tell everybody what you saw here and go home to your mother because I spanked you.
And it's funny too, because then she's like, all right, all those that are like wounded, leave, but leave your limbs here because those are mine. And that's such like a classic like Japanese samurai like movie, like the respect, the, you know, the, oh, you've lost the battle, you leave with your lives, but you don't leave with the value of your like dignity, you know. You'll forever remember looking at your stump arm that I beat you. And it's beautiful. I think you're right. And I mentioned this in the production meeting that we had, you know, it shows her mother side a lot. It shows like, wow, she's this ruthless killer. But yes, they're even, you know, towards the end of the movie, towards like the end of this movie, you know, the goal of avenging her daughter's death. Because in her eyes, her daughter is still dead. Little do we know that, you know, she's not dead.
She's alive, yeah.
But this shows like, this isn't just ruthless killing. This is killing to get to, you know, to get back for this pain of losing her daughter in such a brutal way. And I think that there's sympathy in this action. I'm not going to kill you. You're a little kid who, you know, did some bad shit and joined a gang. Go home to your mom. Here's a spanking. Don't do this again. Be a good boy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, there's even like little things in that scene that are like really cool. And I had mentioned this in the pre-pro that, like, you know, there's like little things like on her ASIC shoes, which I don't even know if they like sell those ASIC shoes. Like they definitely sell that model of ASIC shoes still, but I don't even know if they would sell a Kill Bill like version of it, like black and yellow, and it says "fuck you" if you close up on the bottom of her shoes and when they're shooting up. You know what I mean? And I think I don't like we can segue into him, like his love of feet at some point. Not right now, but we will
God.
at some point.
That could be its own podcast.
That could be its own podcast. All his love of feet. But you know, the man likes what the man likes. You know what I mean? You don't need to. I don't think we're the first people to ever bring up his love of feet. I don't think we'll be the last either.
I don't think we'll be the last time.
You know, but I just think that that's like a really cool little detail. It just like makes her character like that much cooler. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like dwindling down to this final battle with Oren Ishii. And I think in a lot of ways, I feel like he kind of does Oren a little dirty, because like the fight scene between the two of them is like so quick. You know what I mean? It's like such a short segment of the film, but like the cinematography just in that like one scene alone, when it's like in the snow and she's wearing this like white dress and they're like staring each other down and everything like that, is like so cool, because I feel as though Oren kind of has an idea of like where she's at right now. You know what I mean? Because it's brought to your attention that she's gone through something similar. You know what I mean? There are two people that have had similar paths in life, It's just that O-Ren is on the other side of what she's trying to achieve. You know what I mean? So, they show O-Ren Ishii's come up in the Yakuza clan, and her father was killed, by the Yakuza, and she at 11 years old kills a Yakuza boss because he's like a pedophile, and just like all like this awesome anime scene. And I feel as though like it's great to like show these Japanese characters in this like this flashback in like an anime style scene, because I feel as though they could have done it and gotten like an actress to do all this stuff, but it just it like draws an importance to this scene. It like makes you pay attention because they switch the styles completely. She goes on this quest, she kills the Yakuza boss, and then she's kind of like, okay, now I'm gonna be a woman who is the leader of the Yakuza. And she, during like the first meeting when all the Yakuza bosses are sitting around the table, and she cuts the dude's head off, which I think is like to me is one of the scenes that like sticks out the most in this film. Like, I say that the Yakuza fight scene is like the iconic scene in this, but like when I think of Lucy Liu, I think of that scene, always, and I always think like, oh man, that's like the coolest thing ever. Like you cut a dude's head off, and then you're like, you hold his head up and you go, now, if anybody has a problem with me, tell me now. Tell me right fucking now, because, we can deal with it. We have a way of dealing with that,
And it's like funny too, because, Tarantino's kind of breaking the third wall, in a sense, and kind of connecting Lucy Liu's character to like her actual self. It's interesting that like, in that scene that we're talking about, they're like what gets her upset is that they're saying, one of the guys of the board of these Yakuza speaks out, and he's like, well, why are we letting this Chinese American half Japanese woman control the Yakuza? And that's funny because rather than having Lucy Liu play this stereotypical Asian American actress role where she has to play any Asian nationality, Tarantino pokes fun of it and uses, because Lucy Liu is Chinese, Thai and American. And Tarantino, rather than just being like, oh, you're an Asian typecast, he's like playing with it. He's using that Chinese American in the scene, and that's what's the funny part. And then, he's like, why is this Chinese American Japanese controlling the Yakuza? This is ridiculous. And then she's like, cuts his head off, and then she's like, well, this is an open office. You can speak your mind. You can say what you want, and I will listen, except those things. Don't ever bring that up again. and that's a very funny and kind of cute way to not only break this third wall and bring in this, not only this question of why are Asian American actors or Asian actors have to play any Asian nationality, but also, pokes fun at the actress and in a joking and nice way, which I think is very cool and also a pretty crazy scene.
Yeah. So there's two things that we can delve into off this. So I feel as though it's important that you mention that, because it's kind like in the scene where the Yakuza fight happens, as I mentioned, she's wearing the Game of Death like jumpsuit, and it's kind of like it's kind of like Bruce Lee came to American cinema, and he was wearing that's like an iconic look for him. He's this Asian actor who like made it big in America, and she's this American woman like coming to Japan and learning all their ways and becoming this like ruthless killer, this it like using Japanese martial arts. And I just feel like it's like a cool little thing. But also Lucy Liu's character is an Asian American who's in the same kind of realm as Uma Thurman's character there. You know, they're like almost like two sides of the same coin. You know what I mean? They're not. They're kind of, like I said, they're cut from the same cloth almost, just like in different little variations of ways. You know, and that's a lot of fun to see. And then, and the other thing that you could say about this is like these are two actresses who are like they're these super badass characters, and you know, I you know it's kind of fun to see that you know we can have these female characters who are honestly way cooler than any male character in this film. You know what I mean? And you know, I know I'm doing like the women's power type thing right now, and I'm a man, like whatever. You can fucking dog me for it all you want, like eat shit, I don't care. But these characters are like arguably some of the coolest characters in Tarantino's like universe. You know what I mean? I would put them up against like any character in Tarantino's universe and be like, yeah, I think they would stand a better chance of winning a fight. You know what I mean? So like I just think it's really cool, and it's great to see that, especially in like 2004 2003, that we were putting things like this on film. You know, you can say that like, oh, she's motivated by like this man and whatever, but like I think
No,
that
she's not.
I don't
No,
think
she's
she's
not.
I don't think she's but that's
She's
what I'm
motivated
saying.
by her daughter.
She's motivated by her daughter. She's motivated by hate. It could have been, and most of the people are women who did this to her. You know what I mean? This is like a very women-centric story.
Yeah,
you know?
and I really like your point there. And yeah, I mean, and to defend Tarantino, and you know, you know, people can call him sexist at times, people can call him racist at times, but you know what, man? In 2003, you name me a movie where the main cast is women, and I'm very angry about this because it pisses me off. The main cast is women. The story is literally about women. It's literally about a woman's journey. He's taking all these things. This whole podcast, we're talking about the classic films, the classic storylines, the classic journey, but he's putting it as a woman, and it's ridiculous that he gets called these things because literally, I mean, in 2003, you name me a movie that is doing this stuff for women. Now you got Ghostbusters being turned into women. You got all these things trying to make up for it. But Tarantino, who's labeled as a sexist by some people, as a racist by some people, shout out Spike Lee, who calls him a racist. And I have this point as well about Django, and you know, a lot of people call him racist for that, and we'll get into that later. But it's ridiculous because he's literally telling the story of a woman. I mean, who are the most relevant men? Bill, I guess. Yeah, Bill and Bud, Michael Madsen. But yeah. Bill and in Kill Bill 2, it's the trainer, but for a short little bit. But Bill is the revenge, is the motive, but not the motive. The motive is the daughter, but he is the guy that she is trying to get rid of. But this is a woman's story, man. And Bud is basically like he's just a guy. He's just a little schmuck that lives in a caravan in a camping car in the middle of the woods. Like, who gives a shit?
Yeah,
this
man.
is a woman's story, and it's if you don't see that, you're blind, and it really gets me angry.
Yeah, if you ask me, Bud is like the weakest character in like the entire film. Like he's just kind of there. He gets off by the snake. You know what I mean? He gets like bit by the snake. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, and it's interesting to see that, you know, Michael Madsen's character gets killed by a snake bite, which is like the most bitch ass way to go out in this film, in both of these films. You know what I mean? Because you got people getting their heads sliced off, you know, you got like all these cool deaths and everything like that. And
also, it's a Viper Squad too.
Yeah. And it's, you know, and then Bill gets killed by the death punch, which is kind of like a snake bite, you know what I mean? By Uma Thurman's character, you know? And I just think that I just think that's just like a really cool thing to show that like these two men are going out in this like very unceremonious way, you know what I mean? Or not necessarily Bill does he go out in like an unceremonious way, but like they both get killed by like a snake bite, you know? Mm-hmm. Like it's kind of like a fuck them. They don't even get a cool death, you know? They're done, you know.
And just to wrap up this point too, the Death Punch, another thing thrown in from to commemorate Japanese cinema and martial arts cinema, and I like that too. It also connects with the women thing that we were just talking about because these men aren't given a cool death. Lucy Liu's given a cool death. Vivica A. Fox is given a cool death, but the death for Bill is simple. But the thing that's important in that scene is the daughter, is the connection between Uma Thurman and her daughter, and then they just drive off in that what is it, convertible, and they're done. They drive off, and that's it, and that's beautiful. Now, before we head into 2, there is one more scene I want to talk about, and this is a scene that is replicated a lot in cinema and in the high levels of film analysis. Is the movie itself isn't considered to have such high esteem, but this shot in particular is replicated a lot and also shown a lot, and that's from Orson Welles' Touch of Evil. It's the opening shot for this scene. We're going to show it right here, but basically we see this guy plant this bomb, and then the camera's kind of tracking him as he plants this, and then it lifts up into this crane shot that's beautiful, and it kind of goes into these like town center that shows these people, not noting that there's a bomb, obviously, as this car where this bomb is planted in is like traveling through the center. People are partying, people are talking, having fun, and we as the audience know that 1 second it's going to go off. And we're going to show it right now. Yeah, so isn't that really like such an interesting scene? The film itself, it's all right. It's Orson Welles. You think it's top, so you hold it to a high level, but it's such a crazy scene to have like that happen. And here's the scene from Kill Bill that kind of replicates it, except instead of the bomb, we have Uma Thurman, who kind of represents it. Let's take a look at that right now. Yeah, I mean, also so cool to have like Uma Thurman like creeping around like that, and that beautiful crane shot that lifts from a tracking and goes up in the air, and you see all the ambiance of this Yakuza nightclub. Really, really cool. Before we get into 2, soundtrack, Bernard Herrmann, my guy, Taxi Driver soundtrack, tons of others, but also Encino, oh God, he does all the Encino Morricone, who does a lot of spaghetti western soundtracks, also was involved in it, and Twisted Nerve. I mean, with the
Rod Stone, 2 damn phones.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, everybody knows that.
Everybody knows Chill Bill, baby.
Yeah, exactly. Except fuck Rod Stone because he punched X in the face. RPX. Let's get into Kill Bill 2. Another classic setup with this training montage. I mean, not only hints of Japanese cinema, but hints of all kinds of martial arts or action movies with this great training. Why don't you go ahead and take us off a little bit of what you thought of it?
Well, the scene that most sticks out to me in 2 are the training scenes, and you just see her struggling. You get this whole like, I just always remember her punching the bricks that like he just punches straight through it, and she's got to just keep punching through it, like to the point where her hands are literally shaking at the end of the day, you know, and she can't even like eat. And then he's like, no, if you're gonna eat, then like you can eat off the floor like an animal, if like you're gonna do that. So like
She's
you
having
literally
trouble with the chopsticks and everything.
yeah. And I think that it's just like a testament in these films to like, it goes back to the Mamba mentality thing, you know. It's like this is what shows you what Mamba mentality is. You know what I mean? To the definition of like Kobe Bryant, you know, like it doesn't matter. Like your hands could literally be shaking. You could be against like all these odds and everything like that. You could literally be dying, but it's like that doesn't give you an excuse not to like try for something, you know? And then the other scene that really sticks out to me is like the Superman monologue scene where he talks about like how, you know, Superman is different because Superman is always Superman. You know, Clark Kent is the disguise. Superman is always Superman. When he wakes up, he's Superman, you know, that whole thing, you know. But, you know, as much as he does get things wrong about like what Superman is in that, and, you know, I'm not going to go into that. That's like a whole different discussion, you know, but he's trying to make a point about Uma Thurman's character. She's always a killer. You know, you could play the part of the mother. You can play this part. I can play the part of the father, but we both know who I am and who you are at the end of the day. We could have played house. We could have done all this, but at the end of the day, it's not going to last because we know who we are at the end of the day. It's kind of like saying like, you know, people don't change, but I feel as though Uma Thurman's character doesn't feel that way. You know, she feels as though like, oh no, I can make this change in my life. I can totally like, I can always do that. You know, Vivica A. Fox's character seems to have done that at that point, you know, until her past comes in to haunt her, you know. Like I definitely think that, you know, people can make a transition into like a completely different type of lifestyle than they would have originally thought that they could have done. You know, I think that goes for like everybody, you know, and that it's a very defeatist monologue that Bill gives. It's basically to try to like put her down, you know, in this moment. So
yeah. And I mean, I really think like for me, what sticks out in this part, in part 2 and volume 2 is like the ending. Like finally Bill and Uma are, you know, Beatrice Kiddo, whatever you want to call it, the bride, whatever, Black Mamba. That's the confrontation, big moment. And yeah, the training scene. And of course, you know, now, obviously the controversy with the car crash scene, that truck that Tarantino had, you know, not forced, but had definitely, you know, pushed for Uma Thurman to do her own stunts for the continuity of this scene. And she ended up really hurting herself and hurting her neck and her knees, and that whole controversy, of course. And you know, she forgave Tarantino, and Tarantino, you know, felt awful about it. You know, sometimes things happen, and as a director, you have to understand you're always trying to focus on, you know, what's great for the film. How can you make it? And sometimes you brush aside things that could really be dangerous, and in hindsight, you feel like, okay, it's just like when you're doing something bad. Say you're doing, I don't know, you're smoking weed, and you're like, oh, I'll smoke here on this corner. You know, it'll be fine. I'm not going to get caught. And then the cop rolls up, and you're like, you know, I've done this a million times. Why should I get caught? And then the cop comes, and you're caught. And it's similar in its nature. It's not meant to, you know, obviously he didn't mean for her to get hurt, but it happened, and he had to own up and take responsibility for it. And it sucks, and it doesn't seem like it's affected them as a friends, as collaborators too much. She seems to have forgiven him. He seemed to have been very apologetic towards her. But that's something that sticks out now on this film too. Other than that, I would say the training, like we had discussed, is very powerful. It also, yeah, I mean, the ending, I like it. I feel like there's a lot of filler in Kill Bill Volume 2 to get to that ending. And that's a beautiful ending and a powerful ending where we see the woman, the mother and daughter reconnect. Finally, now maybe she can be happy. But maybe not. Maybe Vivica A. Fox's character's daughter, who, you know, comes back in the future.
This is an interesting point because a lot of people. So I think this is kind of like where we go to like the speculation about like what his 10th film could be, and there's like rumors that he might have a script for like what Vivica Fox's like daughter would do, and she says in volume one, we keep going back to volume one, but like uh she says in volume one, she's like, when you grow up, if you have a problem with what I just did, find me, whatever. I'll deal with it because I understand that like actions have consequences, and that's what this entire film is about, and that's like if we get a Kill Bill volume 3, I don't think we would get Kill Bill. We would get like kill somebody else, like
Kill Uma.
kill Uma, kill Bride, something like that.
Kill
But like,
Kiddo.
yeah, but it would be essentially Kill Bill Volume 3, and who knows who could play that character. I mean, Chris and I were saying in pre-pro that we could see like Zendaya playing that character, and that would be
That would be
like
sick.
so that would be sick. I would totally watch like this quest for like Vivica Fox's daughter, like to like go and kill the bride basically, and see where that goes. But it kind of like, I don't know, man. I don't think that would be his final film. It's fun to like speculate and think like, oh, like could that ever happen or anything like that. But the likelihood of that actually happening is like in my mind very slim, because if there's anything I've learned in life, especially when it comes to movies, like you don't always get what you want.
Yeah.
Like
I know, so you never wanna overdo things.
yeah, not to like be so defeatist about it, but like sometimes the film in your head is a lot better than the action that you get. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times, like this could be said about like the new Tom Hardy movie that just came out. Like it's being like panned everywhere, and it's being like people are saying it's like one of the worst movies of the entire year. And you and I haven't seen it yet, and we were really hyped up about it when we saw the previews for it. And now that I've seen all these reviews, it makes me want to see it for sure, but I'm very, very prepared to be extremely disappointed by that film. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing, and especially when it comes to Tarantino stuff, especially lately, you don't go you can't go into these things expecting like this what he used to do. You know what I mean?
Also, like, look, if he was like, look, I'm gonna pump out 2-3 more films, I'd be fine if he did a Kill Bill Volume 3. But this is his last one, man, and the guy has not won Best Picture or Best Director yet. And I think that if this is going to be his last one and he's sticking to that plan, I think he's got to go all out, man. You got to make that one that's like, dude, Oscar winner or go home. Now, look, he's won for Best Original Screenplay, and yeah, but look, man, Best Director, Best Picture, go after it. Go get the bag, Tarantino. Get it and secure your legacy. And he said this. He says, like, I want there to be a debate for people between the top 10 lists. I want the top 10 list to be a debate. That's his goal. And you get yourself an Oscar, that makes it spicy. You get yourself a Best Picture or a Best Director, that makes it spicy.
Yeah.
I think, and this is my personal opinion, and we'll get more into this in our next podcast on Django, I think that Django was his closest, and I think he fucked it up for himself. And we're going to talk about that in the next podcast of this Quarantino Special.
Yeah. So obviously Chris just revealed that the next one will be Django Unchained, which, I think personally is one of the underrated ones in his like library of films. And, we can have our own little debate at the end of this, like what we think is our top 10 list, or top 9 at this point, not top 10, for his films, so, stick around for that. We'll be posting that very soon. But, for the most part, this has been Kill Bill. Number 1 is obviously the superior one. I don't think Chris disagrees with that.
I don't, but if you do, drop it in the comments.
But if you do, if you want to debate us, drop it in the comments, man. I'm totally willing to see your points on it. I'm totally willing to rewatch this movie with like a different perspective. I don't think you can watch 2 without first watching 1, though. But
No, of course not.
yeah. And this has been the RC Cinema Podcast. Look out for
Tarantino Special, baby. Tarantino Special, Quarantino Special. We're here in our homes. You're there in your homes. Watch some movies, man. Come on. And you know what? We're going to drop a list on our Instagram and maybe at the end of this video of films that you should see and check out that Tarantino has used and that have influenced Tarantino. And if you love Tarantino, if you hate Tarantino, I don't really give a shit. But you should check him out. And yeah, we'll see you on the next one on this Quarantino Special.